Hi, welcome back to Between You and Me. My name is Star, and I am so excited to introduce my next guest. But this one is going to look a little bit different. October is National Domestic Awareness Month, Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so I didn't even realize that when I asked this next guest to come on. But maybe you're thinking you don't have any personal ties to domestic violence, but 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men in their lifetime will experience some type of domestic violence in romantic relationship. So this is important because if it's not you, it's somebody around you. And I'm also just so amazed by this woman who has really dedicated her entire life to awareness, elevating young women. She's a former Miss Hawaii, and she's just so stunning and so eloquent and doing a lot of good work in our community. So without further ado, Miss Juliet Lighter-Kamm.
Aloha, Star. Oh my gosh, what an introduction. Can I just take you home and have you on do everything for me?
Yeah,
every event.
I've seen your house. I'd love to live there.
Yes,
so that's actually
please.
fabulous. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I mean, it's our busiest month of the year, just because it's National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which it's a bittersweet month for me, right? It brings out so much emotion being a survivor and an advocate and doing this for 15 years. But it's also exciting because I get to gift women through our self-defense classes and our school events. So I'm excited, but there's so much emotion that comes with it.
So for people who may not know your story and exactly who you are, can you just tell us a little bit about, your story as a survivor and how that turned into advocacy?
Yes. So I was 17. Actually, I take that back. I was 15 when I was in my first abusive relationship. I was in high school and had been dating my high school boyfriend for about 3 years. And at age 17, and throughout those years, let me take you back. He was very abusive, verbally, emotionally, mentally, and of course, physically, with like slaps and pushes and different things that people would probably be like, oh, that's not that bad, but it is bad, right? Because no woman or man should be getting hit by their partner. And at age 17, it was probably one of the worst moments in my life, incident that changed me forever. And that's why I'm sitting here right now talking to you and have been an advocate for dating violence. My ex-boyfriend at the time had beat me so bad, he broke 2 of my ribs, damaged my collarbone. I had 2 black eyes. I had glass pieces in my skin all over my face and on my body because he had shattered the window when I tried to drive away. And I mean, of course, many other physical, I don't know, not ailments, but that's not the word I'm looking for. But, it's funny. It takes me back because I haven't spoken about that particular night. I remember it was an evening and, it was a hard moment, to realize it was so surreal because I remember just, taking the hits and taking the slaps and whatever it was. But it was like an out-of-body experience because I knew like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I allowed myself to get to this point to allow someone, a man, to put his hands on me and to just break me emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and at that time physically. And but it's also a moment that I will tell people that I'm so grateful, and people don't understand that. As a Christian woman that loves God, this is my story. This is my testimony. God knew 20-something plus years ago that I would be here advocating and fighting for a cause that I never thought I'd be fighting for, and really being a representation for women that have lost their lives to their partners, women that are currently in abusive relationships that don't know how to speak out, for the young girls that don't know how to verbally explain, like, hey, I'm in an unhealthy relationship. Like, I represent all those women. And for me, I used to think of it, God, it's such a heavy burden, but I'm so grateful for this opportunity and to have this platform and to be able to advocate and fight against this social issue that now people can't ignore.
Wow. Thank you for your bravery to talk about it and to even recall those moments. I can't imagine it's easy. And I'm wondering, you said that he'd kind of shoved you around and there were slaps and then there was this big elevation of putting you in the hospital. And I'm curious, like, was that moment the light bulb moment, you know, where this is not okay, but was it a really slow incline, or was it kind of like from, you know, slaps and pushes to fully getting beat by him?
I think it was a slow incline, right? Because as an abuser, they try to, what do we say, like wine and dine. It's like you're their princess and they love you and they care about you. And then that turns into a form of control, right? Like, oh, to control what you're wearing and who you're hanging out with. But at that time, when you're 15, 16, 17, you take it as, wow, this person really loves me. They want to be with me all the time. But it's a form of control, and then turns into isolation. And I think probably 6 months prior to this incident, things really started to pick up. You know, it wasn't just the slapping and the hitting. It was like he would spit on me or he would punch me. And so it did. And at those moments, they were light bulb moments. And I tell women, like, you know, our gut feeling, we know we're in something bad, but we don't know how to quite get out of it. But yes, that moment, that evening, when he put me in the hospital, it was like something shifted in me. Everything changed. And I finally, you know, woke up and was like, what am I doing here? But, you know, the defining moment was, I remember lying down in the hospital, and I'm raised by a single parent. My dad came in to see me, and my face is swollen, right? It was like I was unrecognizable. And my dad's old school, a hard worker, a tough man. He's a man of few words, but very loving. And I started to see him tear and cry. And I was like, and I get emotional about that because it wasn't even about me. It was seeing my dad get emotional. And I realized, gosh, I'm not only hurting myself, I've been hurting myself, but I'm hurting my dad, the man that I love the most in the world. And his tears changed my heart. It just shifted. Everything shifted. And then, you know, after that, it was like a healing process and being able to try and find myself again and be confident. And then I went back to school, you know, decided to finish my bachelor's and do all these great things, run in Miss Hawaii USA, just things I wouldn't have done before. And I always think back to that moment that it wasn't about me, because I probably would have stayed, to be honest, as a victim of dating violence. I probably would have stayed even after my boyfriend had beat me that bad. But seeing my dad and his reaction, I couldn't hurt someone I loved anymore. So that was a defining moment for me.
Wow. You know, I was raised by a single mom.
Yes,
You were
love
raised
her
by a
so
single
much.
dad, and you talk about how he really was the deciding factor for you to get out. And I want to address, you know, the mental hurdle it takes for women to take that step, to realize that this isn't okay anymore. But I'm curious, because growing up with just a single mom, like, you know, people talk about daddy issues, and it definitely has impacted my relationship with men. And I'm kind of just also curious how, on the opposite side, having a really strong dad that you really loved, and he's like your best friend, you've said, how you think that has affected your relationships, and if it was something to do with not having your mom around that got you into a situation where you were taking abuse from your boyfriend.
That's so funny that you asked me that question, because I feel like now in my 40s, like I realize I have mommy issues, right? We're the opposite. And I think the mommy issues came into play in my relationships because I felt abandoned by my mom. But I didn't really experience the emotions till the last 2 years.
Wow.
And as I look back, I was like searching for a love, that void that my mom never gave me, you know, because as a young girl, as a woman, you want to have that mother-daughter relationship to, you know, teach you how to do makeup or go help you get ready for prom, or just be there in those critical moments, especially to be able to vent and say, I met this boy and I really like him. I had none of that. And my dad, like I said, the best dad ever, but he wasn't an emotional person, and I couldn't really like talk about my heart with him, you know, be like, oh, okay. He was just one of, you know, we surfed together. We did physical things together, but it was never like that emotional connection, though we did have it. So yes, my mommy issues tied into me making poor decisions in men, because my abusive relations continued after high school. Then in college, I was in another abusive relationship in my 30s. It was just like,
So it wasn't the end.
it wasn't the end. It was like it was like this cycle that, yes, I got out of one bad relationship to find myself in another, and in another. So, but I don't judge, right? Because I understand. And as a victim, people don't realize, like, I hate that question when they say, like, why do you stay? Why did you stay? Why didn't you leave? Rather than saying that, we should be saying, like, how can I help you? How can I support you? Because I can tell you why women and men stay. There's fear. Obviously, fear is a big presence. But the biggest thing is shame. I carried so much shame that I couldn't believe I was in a situation. Because in high school, I was senior class president. I was prom queen. I was all these things. I was in clubs. I was getting good grades. But then it was like I had this second life that I was in such a unhealthy place mentally and physically, that I didn't really share with people. Of course, people that were close to me, they knew, but I just kind of, it was like imposter syndrome. I was like this happy-go-lucky person at school, and then behind the doors, I was like literally wanting to kill myself all the time, just feeling like, God, I don't want to live anymore. It's so much shame, and it was just, it was so much emotions. So
I want to talk about that denial space. Because you said there had, you punched you and it had gone on for a while, and you knew that wasn't right, and that to a degree that was violence, but it wasn't enough it didn't activate action for you to draw a line. And I just think about all these women that, what you really said on a podcast last year struck my heart, that it's not that people don't know this isn't wrong. It's that they just make excuses for it, or make room for people's faults because they love them so much. And I'm curious about that mental hurdle, what it takes to really jump from this is not okay, but I love this person, to I am drawing a line in the sand. Can you talk about kind of your experience with that?
Yeah, it is a mental hurdle. As I look back, and as a victim, you really truly you love that person, right? So they can be hitting you, they can be calling you names, but because as a perpetrator, their whole goal is to break you down. And it's a process, like you said, it's a process where, one, it starts with pouring love into you and saying how beautiful you are and how much they love you. And then it slowly turns into control. And then it turns into isolation from family and friends. So now, as a victim, and I'm speaking for myself, I felt like I only had my boyfriend at that time. I could only count on him. He was the only one that loved me. He was the only one that cared about me. Even if he was hitting me, calling me names, cheating on me, whatever it is. But obviously he would hit me, and then the next day it's like, I love you so much. I didn't mean to do it. I can change. And at 15, 16, 17, I didn't have the mental wheelhouse nor the confidence or the knowledge to know, like, wow, I'm in an abusive domestic violence relationship. Yes, I know it's wrong, but I didn't know how to get out of it. And again, I feel that feeling of shame, it paralyzes victims. It paralyzed me because I didn't want to admit that I was in this situation. And so the other side of me was like, I just don't want to live anymore. I would rather at that point have really taken my own life than have to deal with everybody coming out and telling people I'm in this abusive relationship and this is what I'm dealing with. It was just so much shame. And I look back too, I come from generational abuse. My grandmother was abused by my grandfather. My mom was abused, not by my dad, but really physically violent relationships. And I always told myself I'm never going to be that person. I never wanted to be like my mom or my grandmother, and I was. And I look at it, I'm like, gosh, it's generational abuse. And that happens a lot here in Hawaii, right? Where you see your grandmother, your auntie, your sister, your cousin, and then your mom or whoever it is. But as I look back, my biggest mental block was the shame that I held on so many different levels.
And how do you combat that? You know, like for a woman that's watching who's like, yeah, there's just too much shame. It's not worth it in that headspace. What do you say to those types of women?
What I would tell them now,
women going through that type of thing, not those types, but
right, women going through it is and I'm not an expert, but I can speak from the heart and being a survivor now of dating violence, is that there's always a way out. As cliche as that sounds, at that point, I didn't think there was. I didn't know what was out there. And again, that's why I started Women Speaking Out. And I've had it for 15 years, is if more organizations like Women Speaking Out existed that were on the side of being preventative and proactive and educating our future generations about what a healthy versus unhealthy relationship looks like, self-love, providing life skills, for example, like financial literacy to women, I strongly feel I would have made better decisions, because I would have known, like, I can get out of this. There's techniques, there's ways. But as victims, you just feel like, God, there's no way out. So what I do want to tell women is there's always a way out. Whether you're married, you've been with this person for a long time, you just have to really one day like look in the mirror and say, like, enough is enough. Like, you deserve better. Like, really look at yourself in the mirror and say, you deserve better, you know? And but again, everyone's situation is different, and I understand that. And having my organization throughout the years, I've spoken to many young women of all ages, to parents who reach out to me to get advice. And again, it's going to be different, but it's a hard topic, right?
Yeah.
It's a hard topic, and I'm not the expert, but I am a survivor. And again, we're on the preventative side, but there's always hope. And especially now with so many different organizations out there, they're more reactive, of course, coming in to help the victims and doing certain things. WSO, Women Speaking Out, we're the only nonprofit here in Hawaii that focuses strictly on the preventative measures, because I feel like that's where it needs to start. We have to have a cultural change. We have to change the social norms, especially with social media and movies and songs that portray it's okay to hit a woman. It's okay to hit a man, like, but it's not. And I know that's not going to happen overnight, but I'm willing to dedicate the rest of my life to fighting for it and doing whatever I can to continue to speak up and say, nope, we have to change. And that, to me, starts with educating students in middle school through college and saying, hey, you're worthy. You have to make better decisions. Like, I want our youth to make better decisions than I made, because I didn't have the tools back then.
You brought up how abusers will really isolate their victims. And can you talk a little bit about what it can look like for friends who are watching this or are suspicious that maybe their friend is in a domestic relationship?
Right.
Because I've had a friend that I felt like that was not okay. And you bring things up and they get really aggressive, and after so much tension, you just start thinking, what else can I do? And I never want to be a part of that isolation, because then you think, well, I'm actually aiding what he wants is to isolate that girl. So how do we keep a safe space and actualize the idea that there's always a way out?
Yes. Again, every situation is different, but I can think back to an example. I had met a young woman who was 16 at the time. And she was working with WSO and just really involved. And as the months went on, as the school year went on, I started to notice that her demeanor changed. She was super bubbly and friendly and always, that student that was like, what do you need? I can be there. But after, 4, 5, 6 months, I started to see that she wasn't as happy. She wasn't as bubbly. So I was like, And then I did notice that she started dating a young man 2 months prior to that. And I was like, wow. And I kind of watched this unfold before my eyes, right? It was like her demeanor changed, her energy changed, even the way she dressed started changing. And she wasn't dressed in any way inappropriate, but she started to wear baggy shirts and baggy pants. And it was just not doing her makeup or doing her hair. And again, this is high school, but she was one of those girls that always took care of herself and just was well put together. And she had this light about her. But 6 months later, I started to see that light dim, and another indicator that I was like, God, this young woman is in an abusive relationship, was she started coming to school events. And it was during school, but it was like, oh no, my boyfriend wants me to have lunch with him, or my boyfriend needs me to help him with his homework, and I was like, wow. And then her friends started to obviously confide in me, like, hey, she's different. Like, she doesn't even want to do things with us, like not even go to the movies or go to the mall. And so that's really a textbook way, right? But it was, I was experienced it again. I was putting myself in this young woman's shoes, like, oh my God, that was me, 20 plus years ago. And so I put her on the side and I just said, and again, non-judgmental, I said, I just want you to know, I'm here if you ever need to talk. Because you never want to approach someone who's in who you think could be an abusive relationship with judgmental statements, right? Like, why did you stay? Why are you with him? Why don't you leave? I just wanted her to know, hey, I'm here. If you need to talk, I'm here. And I think that's the most important thing that you can do for a victim that's in a challenging situation, because we don't know all the details, is to let them know that you're there. And it's kind of like, I call it wellness checks, right? Texting them once a week, calling them once a week, just saying, hey, how's it going? But not bringing up necessarily the situation. But I wish, as I look back at my abusive relationships, I wish I had friends that did that for me, because a lot of times, and I'm guilty of it too in the past, is, and you've had experience with your friend, is friends, you get upset with the person. Why? Like, I can't believe you. You're better than this. But that's like honestly the last thing that they need, for their friends and their family to be judgmental, to be questioning their character, because they already feel broken. So then if they feel like, gosh, my family and friends are now against me, they're going to lean into that partner who is abusive, violent, whatever it is. And so just being there. And again, it sounds so simple, but just being there.
No, so do you think even bringing up things like, I'm concerned, or I think you're in an abusive relationship, can actually push them away if they're not quite there yet?
Right. I think it depends, right? Again, every situation is different. I think the initial conversation, yes, you could say, hey, I'm just checking. How are you doing? Like, I feel concerned. I think you might be in it. And of course, there's going to be denial. There's going to be pushback. Then that's when you have to tread lightly and say, hey, it's okay, but I just want you to know I'm here. If you need someone to talk to, if you need someone to listen, if you want to grab coffee, or if you want to do something, I just want you to know I'm here. Because I've found in the past, and from my own experiences, the more people would push on me and ask more questions, it became like, it was so stressful for me. And it really made me shut down and put up a wall and not ask for help, because I just felt like, God, I'm being judged, or they're upset with me, whatever it is. So you can have that initial conversation, but I think, and again, I'm speaking for myself and what has worked and what I've seen throughout the years, is just to say, hey, I'm here though. If you need to talk, whatever it is, then being there, having that presence for them.
No, that's so good and so helpful. And I'm curious too, for the women that might feel like it's too late, if they're married to this person, and the road to separating is a lot more complicated, or there's kids involved. And specifically, I also want to talk about in the church, because we're Christians, and that looks so different, because divorce is such a topic, right? So when they're married, how does that look different? Do you see that there's more denial? What does it look like supporting friends that are married or married in the church and they're in an abusive relationship?
That's a tough one. There's so many more layers, right? Because yes, and you and I are both Christian women, there's that one thing, like, and there are a lot of Christian women that are in abusive relationships, but there's so many more layers to deal with, whether it's getting separated, getting a divorce, if they have children. This is where financial abuse comes into play, right? Maybe the woman is dependent upon her husband for finances and to be able to live. She doesn't have anywhere else to go. And then you have the other layer of shame, like, oh my gosh, I'm married, I can't tell the church. And then they become protective of their husband. Though he's the abuser or she's the abuser, it can go vice versa. They become protective, right? Because no, but I still love him and I care about him, but I know I'm in an abusive relationship. So to me, there's more layers, but there's always a way out. And I feel in Hawaii, there's so many more nonprofits that are specializing in different things, whether it's TROs, it's being able to find housing assistance, how to navigate the system, how to get therapy. There's so many great nonprofits here, but I'm going to continue to stick with there's always hope. There's just a lot more layers that you're going to have to deal with. Um, I truly believe in, because yes, as Christian, we don't want to get divorced, right? We believe in marriage, but God doesn't tell us to stay in something that is hurting us. God doesn't tell us to stay with a man or a woman that is being physically, emotionally, mentally abusive, And so, and of course, going back to my situation, my dad was the changing moment, but it also was my faith. And, as I look back, for those people that are not Christians, you can understand, but man, God moves in ways.
Amen.
And ways that I couldn't even imagine. I wouldn't ever imagine that I would have a nonprofit that would have sustained for 15 years. And as I look back, I'm like, again, this was my story. This was my passion. This is where God needed me to be, to serve. But I needed to go through my own experiences. I needed to feel the hurt and the pain and the shame and everything that comes with being in abusive relationships so that I can better help women and men of all ages. And I tell everyone this, it's like, WSO is not mine, it's his. I always try to be kingdom minded first. That's my goal, is to be kingdom minded first. And if I'm doing the right thing, my heart is in the right place, he will continue to bless and pour into it. But it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, again, being a married woman in faith, many more layers, but there's always a way out.
And I wanted to unpack and really talk about self-love, what that really means. But first, I just want to say, thank you for your obedience, because you're a natural leader. You could have had any nonprofit and you could have went and done anything, but you used your pain and your story to help other women, and you continue to do that. And WSO has such a wide reach, and it's just been growing before my eyes. Since I was a young girl, I was at your events with my mom, my mom was a makeup artist, and she was Jules'
my favorite
makeup artist. So I grew up just like looking at this amazing woman killing it and helping women. And all these years later, you're just still a pillar and a light in this space.
Thank you. Oh, I love that. A
you.
pillar. I'm going to use that. That's good, man. When I'm down, I have to I got to call you up to hype me up.
Yeah,
man. This is amazing.
Will hype you up. Yes. No, for real. But one of your pillars, since we're on the topic of your platform, is self-love. And for me, as I grow spiritually, emotionally, and maturing, buzzwords are the worst thing to me. Because I think, okay, that's great, but what does it mean?
Yes.
Because we can say that and
all the time.
We all go home and do it in different ways. Like somebody will hear that and go, okay, my face mask. And other people will go home and think, okay, unpack my childhood trauma. What? So what is that?
Levels.
Yeah, there's levels. It's an onion. But self-love, what does that really mean? And how is it the anchor to identity, to self-preservation and protection when it comes to domestic violence, in dating and yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, that is another great question, because it's so cliche, right? Oh my God, self-love, self-love, self-love. And, coming from pageantry, I feel like that became like an anthem, like I'm going to promote self-love and loving yourself. And it looks differently to everyone. So self-love to you may look differently than what it looks to me. But when I think of self-love and in the programming that we do, I like to dig deep. I call it heart to heart, where really figuring out who you are, what you can let go of, what experiences have shaped you, what people have influenced your life. To me, that's what self-love is. And we have this worksheet that we created on our new website. And it's such a great example. And it was actually, I collaborated with Kilano, who's an amazing musician, but she's really a poetic, she's a teacher, and she created this worksheet, and it's about self-love. I'm going to share it with you guys. But for us, I think it's really figuring out who you are as a person and what makes you tick. That's what self-love is digging deep. Yes, you can do the body mass and all of that. And yes, take care of yourself and be healthy. But when we talk about self-love in the realm of healthy versus unhealthy relationships, it's really getting to know yourself. Like, what are your values? What are your boundaries, right? That's a big thing. Like, I love to ask students in middle school and high school, like, what are you okay with allowing and what are you not okay with allowing? And again, if these resources existed 20 something years ago, I feel it would have saved so many lives, right? Young women and men knowing just like who you are. And because if your boundaries are not allowing someone to call you names, then you're going to make a better decision and not end up in an abusive relationship. So self-love for me means digging deep and having a heart to heart with yourself and actually writing it down and visually seeing it and then saying it out loud. Like we have the students write it, but then we like to have them stand up and say, hey, yes, so my boundaries are, because when you hear it out loud, it's different. And when others hear it, it's powerful. In that classroom setting, like, yes, I'm not going to allow someone to do this to me.
Accountability.
It's accountability. So yeah, I used to hate that word, like self-love. But you know what? It's
so good and it's so true, but
it's so
what
true.
does it mean?
Yeah, what does it mean?
Yeah.
And again, yes, like you said, it'll mean something different to everyone. But for me and for what we teach with our programming, it's having a heart to heart with yourself and really getting to know who you are.
I really like saying it out loud because I'm a big believer in journaling.
Yes.
Because you become face to face with what you're doing. And that's for a lot of us the first point of confrontation for what's inside.
Yes.
Because we may think that we're thinking about it, but really until you see it and until you hear it, so it comes out of somebody else's mouth.
Yes.
It changes everything. That's why I love podcasts and I'm so excited for this podcast because it's an opportunity to hear like someone that has your own thoughts, you know, and for so many local women who have gone through situations like you've been delivered through, I think it's going to you help so many people and your voice is so strong and it's
you're the perfect person for this, right? To have this platform because you're so eloquent and articulate with what you do. You know, I know you write, you know, you performed your talent and you did a piece about your mom, right? That's so powerful. It's like spoken word, you know, slam poetry. I love all that stuff. And that's why I love that you're doing this. And you are creating a platform for women like myself who haven't shared their stories so publicly, but to be able to be vulnerable because I'm hoping that a couple women will hear this out there and be like, oh my gosh, like I can relate or I need to get out or there's help or there's hope. So thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, no. I love you so much.
Love you.
I want to talk about. Okay, pause because I want to make sure we look at the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You have your phone on you.
I do.
Jordan. Oh, you're right there. Sorry,
you're like in the shadows. I was like, oh, okay.
What
perfect.
time did you go?
Like 1:30, 1:40. Got some
okay.
time. Yeah,
so we'll just go a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have a silent, and that'll be the come back here. Okay.
Love it.
So I want to talk about Hawaii specifically, because we talk a lot about generational trauma, cyclical family, tradition, right? And not so much always in a good way. What are the factors in Hawaii that influence domestic violence in your experience? And how does this culture, this community look different when it comes to advocacy and helping people get out?
You know, I don't really think the Hawaii, it looks different because dating violence and advocacy and patterns and behaviors are pretty, they're the same across everything, right? As we like to say in domestic violence is there's no discrimination, age, race, gender. But I think things that affect it here in Hawaii is family dynamics and cultural background, whether it's Asian background, Polynesian, and again, there's dating violence in every culture. So I don't really think it looks different here in Hawaii, but what I've seen, and again, I can speak from my experience, is I feel like a lot of domestic violence, dating violence is perpetuated through our families. And again, talking about that generational abuse, you know, again, having seen my grandfather be abusive to my grandmother, I didn't know the extent of it. And then as a young woman, though my mom wasn't in my life, she was kind of in my life. I would see her in multiple abusive relationships. And I remember my mom, she got married after my dad. And I think I was in elementary school. And my stepdad at the time had broken my mom's collarbone and had knocked out her teeth. And again, this is stuff I haven't ever shared. And a month later, she went back to him. and I couldn't understand. I couldn't conceptualize at that time, but I just knew like, wow, my mom, like I don't respect her. Like why would she allow this to happen? And again, I'm grateful to my grandparents and my dad because they really shielded me from that environment. Not that my mom was a bad person, but she was in a bad situation. So I was shielded from that, but yet I would have bits and pieces of seeing that. And it was only until recently that my mom and I connected. My mom lives in San Diego, and she's really she is a beautiful woman. I wish and I continue to pray that we can have a closer relationship. But we were talking and about a couple weeks ago, and she said, I'm so proud of you. Like, how's your nonprofit? She's never ever asked me about that. I didn't even think she knew I had a nonprofit. And I said, oh, it's good. It's busy. And I kept it very surface because I didn't feel like my mom could go deep. And then she proceeded to tell me, what she went through as a child, watching my grandmother get hit and beaten and different things, and my grandfather not being able or being willing to give them money so that they could eat and buy school clothes. And it was just so, I couldn't believe it. I started crying, and then I realized, and then my mom said, and that's why I got into like abusive relationships, because I felt like that was all I deserved. And that's coming from my mom. And again, someone that has never spoken about her abuse openly. And I just thought, wow, in that moment, it's generation. I feel like that's a lot of it here in Hawaii. And again, this is my own opinion, but we see it as normal. It's normalized, like, oh yeah, okay, he hit me or he did this. But back then, no one talked about it. It was taboo, right? You don't talk about being abused and everything. And my mom said, yeah, there's so much shame, and I never talked about it, though everybody knew it was happening. But just to see her like share all these stories, like it really broke my heart. Like, wow, they didn't have resources. My mom didn't feel worthy. She didn't have confidence. She didn't feel like she had anyone that she could turn to. And in that moment, I was like, gosh, it's so generational here in Hawaii. And then it got passed on to me. Even if, of course, I didn't want to be in a abusive relationship, I found myself longing for that love in a different way. My mother, that void of not having her, like I found it in men, and it wasn't the right men.
I think it's so important to say too that just because you recognize a trauma doesn't mean that it's healed.
Yes.
Right away, because I think some people who don't know they have trauma or haven't really unpacked or dealt with something like that, they think, okay, once you realize it, it's healed and it's done. But then there's situations like in your life where, you left the high school relationship, but then you found yourself in other abusive relationships. And so I do want to ask you, one, how did your perspective of your mom change after you were in your first abusive relationship? And the second part of that question is, what did it really look like to heal the idea that you're not worthy enough of love? I know that was your mom's words, but you realized, oh my gosh, I'm in this situation. But then it happened again and again in other relationships. Right. So what did it take to heal that?
Honestly, even after my abusive relationships in high school, in college, and in my 30s, my perspective didn't change for my mom. I still felt, I felt so much shame, but I felt shame for her. Like I had this resentment, like, why did she put herself in these situations? I wasn't even acknowledging, nor did I have the self-awareness. Like, you are that same person putting yourself in a relationship, a bad relationship. It wasn't, honestly, and I realize this as I'm speaking to you right now, 2 weeks ago, as my mom started to open up and share what she experienced as a child, that allowed me to change and shift and really have forgiveness for my mom, forgiveness for myself. It was like a healing moment. And I felt like, gosh, I'm having this nonprofit. I'm also doing it for my mom in honor and for my grandmother, because I really had no idea. I was in this place that you weren't a part of my life, but I realized she wasn't a part of my life because of her childhood, because of circumstances that were out of her control. And then secondly, she was in really bad relationships and marriages that God actually saved me from that, right? Not putting me in that situation, though I found myself in an abusive relationship myself, but it was like my perspective, my heart changed in that moment for her. And I was like, okay, it gave me more of a drive. Like, I'm going to continue to do this work because of people like my mother and my grandmother. And the second part is the healing, right? The healing of it. And you talked about it. It's like, even in my 40s, my mid 40s, I'm not fully healed yet, you know? And even as I sit here doing this podcast, it's healing to be able to talk about what I've been through, to talk about my grandmother, my mother, to talk about the work, the emotions, even talking about my dad. I didn't realize that that would choke me up so much. And, but the healing process never ends. And I feel like I'm constantly pouring into myself, and I continue. The healing comes from when we do events, or when we do a self-defense class, or when I go and I speak to high school students. Like, I see healing slowly, start to happen. And again, it's a process, right? And everybody heals in different ways. And, again, throughout the years, I met a lot of women that, hey, I want to come to your event, but I'm not going to talk about my abuse. And I'm like, that's okay. Healing doesn't mean you need to talk about it like you and we talk about our trauma and we share it with others. Healing can come in different forms. So
And so WSO has a lot of resources. You mentioned online worksheets. Can you talk a little bit about where people can go if they're curious, or they're, wanting a resource to?
Yes. So just so you know, Star, we're super excited. We launched our new website last week. So yes, we're excited. And really this year was a pivotal moment. We changed the trajectory of what we wanted to focus on. So we have our Futures Bright, which is our educational series. And that's where we educate students in high school about all the different things: healthy versus unhealthy relationships, life skills like financial literacy, how to write a resume. And why we do the life skills part is, again, to build confidence, right? To build that self-worth. We also provide scholarships through that. So every year, 4 students are awarded through our Futures Bright series who are doing amazing things in the community and being advocates themselves for things that they're passionate about. And now we have our self-defense classes. So we partner with Women Empowered Hawaii, and we provide self-defense classes taught by women for women. We actually have one coming up this Sunday that we're really excited about at Aloha Tar. And what we love about this event is it's fun, but it's so empowering. We live in a crazy world, right? Not to say that everybody comes from abusive situations, but our whole goal behind the self-defense is just to allow women to feel empowered and safe if they're in a challenging situation. Third thing is, next year we're going to be starting a quarterly Speak Up workshops. And this is going to be for women that are victims and survivors of dating violence. So we'll bring in speakers, we'll provide resources for them to get the help they need, because every person will be at a different level as far as the healing they're looking for and the help. And I feel like that's been on my heart for the last 3 years. God's like, you gotta go back to, it's called Women Speaking Out. And all the last 7 years, we've been so focused on education, which I also strongly believe in. But I want to bring back something and provide this safe community for women to come out. Maybe it's just listening to other people's stories, listening to speakers, different things. So we're really excited about that. So people can visit wsohawaii.org, and they can look for our different events, our different programming. But we're so excited. I mean, it's kind of where we're going into this new season of change and rebuilding. And yeah, we're excited.
So awesome. Now, are men welcome at some of those events, or to volunteer as well, whether they're a victim themselves or they just want to give back in allyship to women?
Absolutely. We love men. And we pivoted, because initially a lot of our programming when we first started was only for young women. But as we were going into the middle schools and high schools, we found the power in having boys and young men sit in and be able to articulate what it means to treat a person that they love with respect. So yes, men are absolutely welcome, even at our self-defense class. It's taught by women, it's for women, but we've had men come out. They're welcome. We have a few spots left for this Sunday. We are almost sold out. But yes, men are absolutely welcome to come out and volunteer.
And I want to add that the space, like for men, you're not attacked there.
No,
it's
not
a
at all.
safe place. There's no judgment, because it just isn't that way. You've created a really, really safe place.
Oh, thank you.
And what about people who want to contribute and want to help, maybe don't want to give their time, but in Jesus' name, I know there's people who are watching who want to be donors, like big time money donors.
Yes, we need that. And so we launched a new campaign this month for National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It is our monthly gifting program. So it's donate $16 a month. That'll help educate 2 students through our Futures Bright program. Or we also have $1,000 like community sponsorship, which is again annual, that will support all of our different workshops, including our self-defense classes. So that new gifting program can be found on our website. And our goal, in Jesus' name, I'm putting it out there, is we were trying to hit 250 people by the end of the year to become monthly gifters, to support and sustain our programs.
Yeah. And that really helps because you can plan ahead. You know
Yes.
that income is coming in and you can just plan for those
Absolutely.
kids.
You know, we're a small nonprofit, but we're mighty and we're doing big things in the community. And I think for so many years, Star, it was hard for people to conceptualize what we're doing. Okay, you speak about dating violence, so you're helping victims or you're doing this. And it was like, no, that's not what we're doing. We're proactive. We're preventative. We are all about educating our future generations to make better decisions. And now helping women to feel empowered, strong, and worthy through our self-defense classes and our speak up workshops. So it's like a 2-part thing.
Well, you're healing community. You know, that's how I think of it because, like the body, there are so many things that can cause damage and ailment to the body and in the community. And so you are a specialized doctor, optometry.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Specialized doctor.
Specialized Dr. Juliet Lighter-Kamm. But yeah, you're really healing community is what I see. And this is such a big area. I'm so grateful to have that you agreed to come on this podcast, that
Such
it's not
an
even
honor.
out yet. And I should say I'm brand new to this. So I realize right now is October. I don't know if this is going to come out in October, but just so you know, October is National Domestic
It was
Violence
meant to
Awareness
be divine
Month.
intervention. God was like, you're going to get to speak about something you care about and a platform. But what I want to say is I'm so excited and so proud of you. Again, this may not be on the podcast, but we're going to give shout outs to Star because, again, what you're doing as a young woman, in everything that you do, I find that you're so passionate and you speak from your heart, but you have so much intelligence and so much drive behind you. It's like, man, your mom would be so proud. And again, your mom was a big part of my life. She was one of those people that, as I look back, she was an advocate for me. She was an advocate and really poured love into me and reminded me how worthy I am. And she would always say, Juliet, I don't know why you date these type of guys. You know you can do better. But as I look back, I'm like, she was an advocate for me. She was a positive female role model. Really, I didn't have that. Like, again, not having the absence of my mom, but your mom was like a second mom. So I'm very grateful to be in your presence, to see what you're doing, see that you won Miss Hawaii and all these. And it's not even just about the title, but it's what you're doing with it now. So congratulations. So proud of you.
I love you so much.
I'm Juliet Lighter-Kamm, founder of Women Speaking Out. And between you and me, you are worthy.